give heed. Charles Freedman is on the air. Where the hell did that come from? Yeah, I'm Charles Freedman. It's my program. We do news talk here from 9 to noon every weekday, and so we commence. It is 9:06 on a Friday morning. You made it through another week. Congratulations to all. And remember, you can celebrate that fact by listening to the program, and better yet, being on the program. The telephone number to do that is 831-265-5050. So relax, kick back, pour that second cup of coffee, and get set for News Talk. Always like to start the program with something pithy. Today, I looked at Real Clear Politics, and I found something that had J.K. Rowling's name on it. Got me thinking about something else. Yesterday, I spent a little time recommending reading for young people. And, most of the things I thought of were, well, a bit ago. I didn't think of the Harry Potter books. And, of course, J.K. Rowling is best known for having written these. I guess it's a thing. I've never been into fantasy and like that. Science fiction, yeah, but not fantasy. I never read any of the Tolkien stuff either. Just wasn't my bag. Anyway, that doesn't diminish the accomplishment of J.K. Rowling, and one of her most recent accomplishments is being canceled by the left because Rowling, unlike, for example, our newest member of the Supreme Court, Ketanji Brown Jackson, actually knows the difference between a man and a woman. And when asked, can define those. Now, today on X, well, Rowling came across this, and it set her off. I can't imagine why. Get a load of this. Womanhood is not a fixed essence. Now, this is being posted by somebody who bills themselves as mind versus myth. Oh, I am so bright. Womanhood is not a fixed essence. It is shaped by history, labor, family roles, and power relations. In different societies and periods, the meaning of being a woman has changed. These changes reflect material conditions, not biological destiny. Like all social categories, womanhood is produced and reproduced through lived relations, not static traits. It evolves with the structure of society. Well, J.K. Rowling read that. Most people would read it and go, well, and move on. Ms. Rowling responded. Being a woman isn't an essence. It's a material, provable fact. I'm not a female human being because society or history made me one, or because I picked the woman category on some metaphysical spreadsheet. I'm a woman because I was born with the equipment to produce large gametes. My biology isn't my destiny unless I'm unfortunate enough to live in a country like Afghanistan, where my femaleness is punished from birth. My biology does, however, mean I am likely to have experiences no man ever will. If I'd been raised by robots in outer space who had no understanding of social categories or gendered norms, I'd still provably be a woman, not a man. I'd certainly suffer some deprivation from not associating with other humans, but on the upside, I'd never have to listen to pseudo-intellectual drivel like this. Game, set, match to Ms. Rowling. I got such a chuckle out of that I thought I'd have to share it with you as a way of opening today's broadcast. And thanks, Ms. Rowling, for an ample display of logic, enhanced and couched in wit. Early August is an anniversary, in this case the 80th anniversary of the only time atomic weapons have been used in combat. Now, this is something that certain people shame, you nasty Americans, you're the only people that ever use an atomic bomb. Well, as a matter of fact, yes. And it's been a while since I've done this, but I feel the need once again to absolutely confirm that the use of the atomic bomb against Japan at that time was not only justified, but in terms of humanitarian considerations, it was absolutely necessary. You say, well, how do you know this? I know it primarily because I read a book. A book? Well, this is a rather special book. The title of it is Marching Orders. Marching Orders. The author's name is Bruce Lee. No relation. Anyway, Bruce Lee's book, Marching Orders, examines the events of World War II through the observational window of magic. I can hear you say, oh, come on, Charles, you believe in magic, do you? Well, this magic has nothing to do with supernatural or spells or anything like that. In this particular case, it refers to intelligence intercepts, which were so sensitive and so valuable that the term given to them was magic, and only a tiny number of people, President Roosevelt, of course, was privy to them, and just a handful of other people ever even had the opportunity to see or know anything about magic. This was incredibly closely held. Well, if it wasn't magic, like, Merlin and a wand and like that, what was it? Japan had codes that they used to encrypt their transmissions and their communications. Their military codes were used to transmit orders concerning troop movements, battle plans, etc., etc. These codes were changed fairly regularly. As a matter of fact, they were changed not that long before the Battle of Midway, and fortunately we'd already read a few things before that gave us enough to know where the Japanese would be, or at least approximately. But since these codes were changed from time to time, it was impossible to really get a good fix on them. The other code the Japanese used was their diplomatic code. Their diplomatic code was not used for the transmission of military information. Rather, instead, the diplomatic code was used by embassies. For example, during the entire war, the Japanese carried on relations. There was a Japanese ambassador in Berlin, and he communicated home. The Soviet Union, it should be noted, did not go to war with Japan. Now, not until, I guess, a week before, I think something like a week before the atomic bomb was dropped, they finally did an opportunistic thing. They were hoping to get in on the occupation, which we forestalled. But be that as it may, there was a Japanese ambassador in Moscow conducting diplomacy, and he reported back. Now, these diplomats and their principals back home in Tokyo talked about major strategic ideas. Among other things, the question, how well is the war going for us? Are we going to continue the effort, etc.? One of the principal arguments against the dropping of the atomic bomb, and you hear this stated as absolute fact by some people who are complete feather merchants. Oh, the Japanese were ready to surrender. The dropping of the atomic bomb was simply an exercise in revenge and hate, motivated, of course, by racism. After all, the Japanese aren't Caucasians, so they must be terrible people who should be squashed like ants. No, as a matter of fact, read Marching Orders by Bruce Lee, you will learn that the Japanese had no intention of surrendering. The Japanese were going to fight on every inch of soil. And they had already demonstrated this with their conduct at places like Iwo Jima, Okinawa, where they made Americans for the conquest of these islands. Their intended defense of their home island would have been far more destructive. Also, you look at I've got the numbers right here. Okinawa, for example. What are the casualties? Okinawa. 7,300 Americans dead, 32,000 Americans wounded. Of course, equipment losses, ships sunk, damaged, aircraft lost, etc. 5,000 seamen killed, another 4,800 wounded. The Japanese, meanwhile, lost some 110,000. Almost all of whom died because the Japanese fought to the death. They did not allow themselves to be taken prisoner. Now, a mere glance at these figures tells you that while a substantial number of Americans were killed on Okinawa, the number of Japanese was far larger. Keep that in mind. It is essential. The thinking that went into the atomic bomb had to do with costs and benefits. You're fighting a war. This is the way you have to think. And it's very important because costs and benefits in this case, it adds up to human lives. Much is made of the fact that an estimated 1 million Americans, Allied forces, Americans and Allies, would die in the campaign to occupy the Japanese home islands. Again, the anti-American, anti-Western propagandists will use this. They say, well, they were perfectly willing to sacrifice the lives of people at Hiroshima and Nagasaki in order to save American lives. Yeah, kill Japanese to save Americans. But remember the numbers out of Okinawa. A substantial number of Americans died, yes, but far more Japanese. So let's complete the equation. Let's accept the idea that 1 million Americans and Allied forces would have died. Now, how many Japanese would have been killed? 2 million? 3 million? Obviously far more. Because the level of fanaticism that was required by the Japanese Bushido cult was such that people had to continue to resist unto death. This is a fanaticism that it was difficult for Westerners to understand then, and it still is today. Levels of fanaticism of this nature are difficult for rational human beings to comprehend, but they are nevertheless very real. When President Truman decided to employ the atomic bomb to end the war against Japan, that single action of his saved more lives than any other action any human being has taken in history. Something like 80,000 people died at Hiroshima, and a similar number at Nagasaki. That's 160,000 people. Japanese people. How many Japanese people would have died in Operation Olympic? That was the name to be given, incidentally, to the invasion of the Japanese home islands. Operation Olympic. Again, we're talking not in the tens or hundreds of thousands. We're talking millions of people who did not die because of Truman's action. And again, the book I've talked to you about, Marching Orders by Bruce Lee, delineates what the Japanese were saying to each other at the very highest levels of their government, through their diplomatic codes, through their diplomatic transmissions. We had the ability to intercept and decrypt these messages. So this was something we were privy to. We called it magic. And, listening in on the top levels of your enemy in time of war, that does sound kind of magical, doesn't it? I can see where the name came from. Nothing supernatural about it. Nothing actually magical. It was all Very real, very solid. A simple interception and decryption of communication. Old-fashioned hard work. And as a result of this, we know their thoughts. We know what they were saying to each other, and we know that there were no plans whatsoever for a surrender. Quite the contrary. If your knowledge of this era in Japan is up to scratch, you're aware that there was even an effort to assassinate the emperor himself. For some time, governments in Japan had risen and fallen by assassination. This was true in the 1920s into the 1930s. The fact that if you were dubbed insufficiently pure, insufficiently fanatical, you were marked for death. And they'd come and machine gun you or hack you up. Once again, I am not making this up. This is Japanese history at that time. Is it a surprise then that when these same fanatics got word that could the emperor himself possibly be getting ready to end the war, to admit defeat? We can't have that. The imperial palace was breached. The emperor was unharmed. But the effort to kill him, the effort to assassinate Hirohito, very real thing. And of course, presently, Hirohito fulfilled those fears. He had been on the throne of Japan for some 20 years, but for the first time ever, the Japanese people actually heard his voice, heard the voice of the emperor, as he informed them that the course of the war had worked out not necessarily to our advantage. So on this early August, now there were two bombs dropped, one on August 6th, the other on August 9th or something like that. I don't remember the exact dates. But at this time of year, we're generally treated to a plethora of, oh God, what a horrible thing we did, and shame on the United States, and you ogres. Nobody else has ever used an atomic weapon. You're the world's worst people. No, we are not. We employed the only weapon available that was capable of demonstrating to our enemy that it was war. Oh, there are suggestions. Well, what we should have done is blown up an atomic bomb somewhere where, it wouldn't have done any harm, and just for people to observe it and say, oh, well, you've got this. Well, for one thing, bearing in mind the level of fanaticism of the Japanese, setting off a bomb in the Mongolian desert wouldn't have impressed them all that much. Secondly, we only had 2 bombs. At that point in time, we had 2 devices. No more, no less. We did not have spare atomic weapons to be conducting free home demonstrations with. And it would be months before another could be constructed. And at that point in the war, every month translated into that many more casualties, that many more thousands of dead, and many more Japanese dead. The meat grinder of that war was consuming human beings on a steady, ongoing basis. No pause, no stop. Just a few accelerated areas here and there when a new invasion was commenced. Stop the war. That's a slogan of, reasonable people. Stop the war. Who wants war, for God's sake? How do you stop the war? You win it and end it. And that brings us to Oh, it's almost 9:30. Let's go ahead and take our break. 831-265-5050 is the telephone number. We shall continue to speak of war and peace when we return.
Back in the 16th century, a famous prophet and psychic, Nostradamus, predicted great disasters. Hundreds of years later, believe it or not, a lot of his predictions have come true. Today we have another psychic and prophet among us. His name is Nostradamus. His great ability to predict when home repairs, primarily a roof, will become a much-needed thing is truly remarkable. His predictions have been renowned and recorded for many years now. Yes, Nostradamus can be found, a key owner at Knox Roofing, and he can give you accurate advice on when your roof will leak. His ability to see your home completed with only the best products and services is truly amazing. If you need a sitting with Nostradamus, all you need to do is call 461-0634, and you can receive a free reading of your home's life and its events about to occur. Okay, thanks, folks.
Treehouse dispenses not only the finest cannabis products, but information to those who want to know how to use cannabis for maximum benefit. Hello, I'm Jenna. If you would like to know how best to use cannabis, ask your friends and neighbors at Treehouse Dispensary, 3651 Soquel Drive. If you're 21 plus with a valid ID, no appointment is necessary and the information is free. Order online at ourtreehouse.io and pick up at our drive-thru. See you.
You need a clean, pleasant space to conduct business, but you don't want the burden of a long, expensive lease. Your solution is Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on Soquel Avenue. Satellite offers private offices, meeting and conference rooms, even co-working by the hour, day, week, or month. Schedule a tour at satellitecoworking.com. Mention Santa Cruz Voice for 20% off your first reservation.
At 9:28, you are in tune with the Charles Freedman radio program on SantaCruzVoice.com. I'm Charles Freedman. Reach the program at 831-265-5050 and join the conversation, make your point, ask your question, or if you would care to, toss things in a completely different direction. If you have something else you'd like to talk about and you think you've got something to bring to our attention, you do that. You do that, and I guarantee your call will be just as welcome. 831-265-5050. As I looked at Real Clear Politics this morning, of course, the first thing that caught my attention was Rowling's little skewering of those in the world who think that womanhood is a matter of opinion. But I also found something else. Only a Palestinian state can stop the Gaza calamity, written by Ami Ayalon in Foreign Affairs. Foreign Affairs. So this is the voice of the foreign policy establishment, as we used to say back in the day, the lace pants boys at the State Department, and etc. At the same time, on the front page of today's newspaper, Israel plans to take over all of Gaza Strip. Well, that's no news to you. If you're a regular listener to this program, you heard about this yesterday. That Prime Minister, Netanyahu, was going to his cabinet with a proposal to continue to prosecute the war against Hamas. Well, the news today, the latest development, Netanyahu was successful. He came to his cabinet and asked for this, and this is a serious matter. They insist on unanimity. Every member of the cabinet has to sign off on this. It can't be a matter of a majority rules. Well, the cabinet was unanimous. And so now the Israeli army, the Israeli military, will continue to prosecute its war effort in Gaza, taking over more territory, clearing Hamas, and in order to... Hamas... I talked earlier about the Japanese and their level of fanaticism. Hamas is a modern-day equivalent of this, only even more so. Question might be asked, turn the page back to World War II. Every year it gets farther and farther back. And it's more and more difficult. I'm 73. I was born 6 years after the war ended, but the world I grew up in was absolutely and completely shaped by World War II. And I can imagine to the people who lived through it, I could talk to my mother, who was a young adult at the time. This was a national mobilization, emergency, calamity, life and death situation, the like of which we kids haven't seen. We toss around the words existential threats. An existential threat. By God, that was an existential threat. Lose that war and we're toast. And there were days earlier in the war when the issue was in doubt. Presently it became generally known. Hey, we're winning this war. We're going to win this war. All we have to do is see it through. See it through to what? Our leadership, President Roosevelt, Prime Minister Churchill, had met fairly early on, at a time when things were still in doubt, but they were thinking, okay, we're going to win, and nothing less than unconditional surrender will be acceptable. We are not going to sign an armistice with the Nazis or with Tojo. They must be crushed, defeated, ended. That was the decision that was taken. Unconditional surrender. It was like Lincoln in the Civil War. Lincoln was urged by many, treat with the Confederacy, recognize them, let's have peace. Lincoln said, no. The Confederacy must be defeated and the Union restored. Nothing less will do. Their level of fanaticism cost Lincoln his life. The story at the end of World War II was a better one. Insisting on unconditional surrender actually allowed for the construction of what has been, by and large, a very successful post-war world. Certainly a more successful world than we created post-World War I. I mean, the music was better, but in terms of lasting peace and effective international arrangements, the interwar period was a story of tragedy. Culminating, of course, in World War II. How bad an ending can you get? Now, why am I bothering to talk about all of this? Well, once again, back to Mr. Netanyahu, his cabinet, their decision to further prosecute the war effort against Hamas. To Prime Minister Netanyahu and many others in Israel, he's not alone, there is an opportunity here, and the opportunity was created and presented by Hamas. Hamas initiated this conflict. October 7th, 2023, they came out of their tunnels and created mayhem. Over 1,000 people massacred in the most vile and brutal fashion you can imagine. And a couple of hundred then taken back as hostages. Even the Japanese and the Nazis didn't do stuff like that. Actually, the Nazis did in areas that they controlled. If the resistance, for example, pulled off an operation, the local population would be called for hostages, and then those people would be shot. So essentially, the entire community was a hostage. We look back at this and we say, my God, this is one more example of why the Nazi regime is a yardstick of evil against which other regimes and movements are measured. Hamas meets that yardstick time and time again. And right now, they continue to hold something like 50 or 60 hostages, most of whom are dead. Right now, most of their hostages are corpses. They're holding dead bodies. I think something like 20 are still alive. World opinion is excoriating the Israelis, the evil Jews. Why do you continue to make war? It's Hamas that's holding the hostages. If you're really interested in ending the war, how would you do that? Today. Simple. Hamas hands over the hostages. Today's headline: Netanyahu plans to take over all of the Gaza Strip. It's approved by the Israeli cabinet. Does that happen if they're not holding the hostages? The answer, of course, is no. The hostages are the reason for all of this. Hamas could achieve a ceasefire, a permanent one, by releasing these hostages. Israel has no appetite for endless war. And public opinion in Israel is turning more and more against further warfare. But as long as Hamas holds the hostages, Israelis are still saying, well, we have to get our people back. The families of those people deserve closure. They deserve their loved ones. Even if those loved ones are dead, they deserve to have their remains back so they can be decently buried. Hamas' level of fanaticism is such that they don't understand this. It seems that, unlike the Nazi government, which once Hitler committed suicide, the very next thing that happened was that the Nazi regime surrendered. Admiral Donitz, who was the successor to Adolf Hitler, promptly contacted the Allies and said, we're ready to surrender. We're ready to give up. After the dropping of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Japanese surrendered. So that unconditional surrender was actually accomplished. Is there anything that would cause Hamas to surrender? Well, according to Foreign Affairs, if Israel, or rather if a Palestinian state were to come into existence, this would do. Let me see here. Last Monday, France and Saudi Arabia launched a plan at the UN to force a more conclusive end to the fighting, encouraging other countries to recognize Palestine and support the creation of states along borders from 1967 on the basis of Security Council resolutions. Canada, France, and the UK have said they will recognize the state of Palestine by September unless the war ends. So, Hamas takes hostages, refuses to release them, continues the war, and for this they get rewarded by these foreign governments and foreign policy experts. You know, it's times like this when some of the language of the MAGA movement becomes really, really attractive. Their frustration against constituted experts whose policies continually yield bad results. How can anybody fail to be frustrated with that? Well, I guess if you're invested in it, you're willing to tolerate anything. Well, that didn't fail. In the meantime, you're looking at a smoking ruin. But this is, let me see, what's the name? Ami Ayalon, writing in Foreign Affairs, and oh my God. Two events have shaped the strategic landscape of the Middle East in the 21st century. The Arab Spring and the October 7th attacks. The Arab Spring radically altered the internal dynamics of many Middle Eastern regimes. It empowered street movements and weakened autocrats' traditional legitimacy. Oh, yeah? Forcing even the most authoritarian leaders to become more responsive to public sentiment. Israel and U.S. leaders should have understood that. In the long run, the Arab Spring would influence how a variety of regional actors responded to the Israeli-Palestine conflict. The Palestinian cause has long served as a unifying banner for otherwise disparate actors. Sunni and Shia, Arab and Persian, Islamists and nationalists. It provides the ideological glue for Iran's ring of fire. Ignoring this reality was a critical error. The October 7th massacre was not merely an act of barbaric terrorism. It sent a deliberate political message, directly challenging the doctrine of conflict management that had defined Israeli policy for over a decade. It was also a rebuke to U.S. assumption that Arab states would proceed in normalizing diplomatic ties with Israel without serious efforts to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Essentially, what Mr. Ayalon here is telling us is that a rational approach to these issues. The Israelis, for example, had absolutely withdrawn from Gaza 2005. At that point, Gaza became a de facto Palestinian state. Now, nobody wanted to admit that. The Israelis didn't make a big deal out of it, although I think they should have. And obviously it wasn't to the benefit of the Palestinians to recognize that their Palestinian state now existed, and all they had to do was demonstrate what they could do with it. Well, they did that. They turned it into an armed camp and a site for terrorist activities on an ongoing basis. They proved that if any Palestinian state, for example, in areas of Judea and Samaria were established, this is exactly what would happen there, too. So Israel is told, okay, in order to placate world opinion, which, of course, we're dealing with the Jewish people here. What is world opinion toward the Jewish people? Need I say more? So the Israeli government has every reason to be very suspicious, not only of the policy solutions, but of the very motives of an international community which has persecuted them for millennia. They're told, you must come to terms with people who will not come to terms. And they have attempted to. The demand here is for a Palestinian state. The Israelis have continually said, yes, we will go along with that. They even created one. The indigent people, the intractable people, are on the other side. They're the ones whose governing documents and founding documents state that an Israeli state cannot exist, cannot be recognized. And when peace is made, such as by President Sadat of Egypt, what happens? Sadat gets killed by a fanatical Palestinian. One nice thing about the fanatics of Islam, they are perfectly willing to kill fellow Muslims. Indeed, I would say that if you look back at it over the years, they've probably claimed the lives of more Muslims than they have of Jews. If you count the casualties of the current war properly as victims of Hamas, then the ratio is incredible. far more Muslims killed by Hamas than by the Israeli Defense Forces. Let me see. 946. We continue to follow this story on an ongoing basis because this, in my view, is just about the most important thing going on in the world today. It is absolutely conceivable that if this is not managed properly and that if the wrong things are done and the wrong conclusions are reached, this could conceivably bring about a much wider war. I have the same concerns with what's going on in Ukraine. I think this is one of the reasons why Donald Trump continually went around the country during the election campaign pointing out these two wars are the biggest issues we face. Who could argue with that? I mean, other issues are important, I understand, but when you have people fighting and dying, and worse yet, innocent people being killed as a result of this conflict going on, that's more important than anything else. Human lives are at risk and being taken on a daily basis. That is bigger than anything else. So how do you end it? In the case of Hamas, I honestly can't see any end to the conflict because unlike Nazi Germany and militarist Japan, I don't see a surrender. Short of the death of the last Hamas terrorist. And the problem, of course, is that as time goes along, more and more victims of Hamas propaganda and misperceptions turn them into additional Hamas fighters. More and more minds are poisoned. I can't help but wonder when the first pro-Hamas terror actions will occur in, say, Europe or the West. We've already seen Islamists carry out atrocious actions. How many of them are, how long will it be before they are specifically linked to Hamas? And say, for example, in the United States, bombings and assassinations and things go on in order to protest our alignment with Israel. You see, this is how Hamas fights its battles. They make no attempt to present a case. Rather, instead, their idea is war. You accomplish things through violence, through mayhem. If October 7th didn't succeed in showing you that, then frankly, I'd have to say that you're a slow learner. One of the things that you have to respect about Hamas, they don't pretend to be what they aren't. They'll come right up and tell you, we are dedicated to the extermination of the state of Israel, and we will kill every Jew we can get our hands on. Either that, of course, take them hostage and make their life even worse. Occasionally I think, what would it be like to be held by Hamas for 600 days? If you're old enough to remember, the Ayatollah's government in Iran took the staff and personnel of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran hostage at the time of the Iranian Revolution. That embassy and those people were held for 444 days. Easy number to remember, isn't it? They were released, incidentally, on the day that Ronald Reagan was inaugurated president. Because Mr. Reagan had made it clear that the Ayatollah did not want to continue to be holding U.S. hostages when he got into office. It was a rather fortuitous opening of a new administration, the ending of a hostage crisis that had been going on for more than a year. But the point I'm making here is that those people had been held hostage for 444 days. The ones who are still held by Hamas have been captive for 600 days and counting. I can't even imagine. And the images that we saw recently of some of those people who'd been held, skeletal human beings, echoes of Auschwitz. These people resembled those few emaciated survivors who were liberated when the Nazi death camps were finally opened and their grisly operations put to an end. It gives currency to the Jewish motto, the Israeli motto, never again. Because the question, well, is anybody even wanting to do that again? The answer, absolutely, on a daily basis. And again, if Hamas has not demonstrated this to you, if they have not proven this to you, then you're not paying attention. You are not paying attention. Time is 9:53. I'm continuing with one eye. I'm looking at this article by Mr. Ayalon. The illusion shattered in the fall of... Oh, hey, we've got a call coming in. Let me see here. Oh, it's Phil. Well, that's great. Let's find out what's on his mind today. We did discover that he succeeded in getting his cell phone back. That's always a good thing. Hi there. How are you doing?
Oh, hi. I'm not doing too bad here. It's still broiling hot here in Sarasota, unlike your area. Well, I guess the inland areas in your neck of the woods, like Morgan Hill and Gilroy and so on, are actually going to be hotter today than Florida.
Really? Well, it does get toasty over the hill, but here on the ocean side of the mountains, right now we've still got some overcast. Of course, it's the higher temperatures inland drag that in, so that marine layer is still overhead, but it generally goes away by about noon or so.
I know. Yeah, I've experienced both climates. If you don't like the weather in your area, just go over the hill, one way or the other.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out, if you were one of the families with a family member held hostage, what exactly do you expect your government to do? I mean, it's obvious that Hamas won't give the hostages up. They don't want to make any deal. So what are these people who are protesting to get back the hostages? What do they expect the government to do?
Well, obviously, there are a number of answers to that, depending on who you are and what your mindset is. There are some who are tough-minded individuals. They share Mr. Netanyahu's idea. If you want Hamas to do something, the only way to get them to do something is to force them to do something, and the only way we will get our hostages back is by physically going in and taking them. The problem with that, of course, and others will figure out, okay, well, there are still 20 of these people alive. It's altogether possible that Hamas will simply kill them. And that's true.
Right.
And for that reason, it has always been my idea, and this may sound rather draconian, but when an organization like Hamas takes hostages, the proper approach is to figure they're dead and conduct policy from that point forward as if they are dead, because any leverage you grant to an organization like Hamas is a disadvantage for your side, for the goals that you're attempting to promote. If you permit Hamas to influence policy by taking hostages, well, obviously that encourages them to take hostages because they can get something by doing that. In my view, that poor young man that we saw the other day digging his own grave, at this point, basically he's in it. And I do not honestly see any way of getting these hostages back alive, these last few hostages. Therefore, the proper way to prosecute this situation is by visiting hell on Hamas. Understand who they are. These are some of the most vicious people who've walked the earth in modern times. They are absolute fanatics. They are bloodthirsty. They are amoral. And anything you can do to destroy their infrastructure, to capture them if possible, kill them if necessary, Hamas must be destroyed. In the name of humanity, Hamas must be destroyed.
Right. So what do these crowds of protesters in Israel, what do they expect? What do they want Netanyahu to do? Because, as you said, they're not going to get the hostages back through negotiation. So what is their answer? All these people who are clamoring to stop the bloodshed, etc.
They don't see it the way I do. Or I'm assuming that you and I are in agreement on this, but no, they don't see it this way. They believe that in order to get the hostages back, you have to deal with Hamas. You have to negotiate with them and make concessions to them. The problem is, of course, that no matter what you concede over the past several weeks, Hamas was negotiating about a ceasefire. And time after time, concessions would be made, offers would be made. Hamas said, no, that's not enough. That's not enough. What does Hamas want? Hamas wants Israel to admit defeat. Hamas wants absolute victory. I mean, who can blame them? Of course they want victory. And if they believe they can get it by keeping these hostages, well, that's their plan.
Yeah, well, eventually the hostages are either going to die or they'll be killed. So then they'll no longer even have that bargaining chip.
God, what a grisly way of calculating. But the thing is that Hamas cannot be permitted to win.
I agree.
And for that reason, those people in Israel who are thinking that somehow a negotiation can be worked out with Hamas, these are kind, gentle, good people, but they are deluded. They are conceding to Hamas humanity that doesn't exist. Hang on. I'll be right with you in another 6 minutes. It's 10 o'clock at Santa Cruz Voice. Okay, let's go ahead, and I've got something here. Ayan Hirsi Ali speaks.
Culture matters. It's the primary source of social progress or regression. Nowhere do we see this more clearly than in the status of women. The Judeo-Christian culture, and perhaps a more upward civilization, has produced over time the law codes, language, and material prosperity that have greatly elevated women's status. But this progress is not shared everywhere. There are still hundreds of millions of people that live in a culture, the Islamic for instance, that takes female inferiority for granted. Until recently, these cultures, the Western and the Islamic, were for the most part separated. But that is changing, dramatically so. Large numbers of immigrant men from the Middle East, South Asia, and various parts of Africa have brought a different set of values to the West, specifically Europe. More than 1 million arrived in 2015 alone. More are on the way. As a result, crimes against girls and women, groping, harassments, assaults, and rape have risen sharply. These crimes illustrate the stark difference between the Western culture of the victims and that of the perpetrators. Let me be clear, not all immigrant men, or even most, indulge in sex attacks or approve of such attacks. But it's a grave mistake to deny that the value system of the attackers is radically different from the value system of the West. In the West, women are emancipated and sexually autonomous. Religiosity and sexual behavior or sexual restraint is determined by women's individual wishes. The other value system is one in which women are viewed as either commodities, that is, their worth depends on their virginity, or on the level of a prostitute if they're guilty of public immodesty, wearing a short skirt, for example. I do not believe these value systems can coexist. The question is which value system will prevail. Unfortunately, this remains an open question. The current situation in Europe is deeply troubling. Not only are Muslim women within Europe subject to considerable oppression in many ways, such norms now risk spreading to non-Muslim women who face harassment from Muslim men. One would think that Western feminists in the United States and Europe would be very disturbed by this obvious misogyny. But sadly, with few exceptions, this does not appear to be the case. Common among many Western feminists is a type of moral confusion in which women are said to be oppressed everywhere, and that this oppression, in feminist Eve Ensler's words, is exactly the same around the world, in the West, just as in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. To me, this suggests too much moral relativism and an inadequate understanding of Sharia law. It is true that the situation for women in the West is not perfect, but can anyone truly deny that women enjoy greater freedom and opportunities in the United States, France, and Finland than they do in Iran, Pakistan, or Saudi Arabia? Other feminists have also argued that non-Western women do not need saving, and that any suggestion that they need help from Western feminists is insulting and condescending to non-Western women. My perspective is a practical one. Any efforts that help Muslim women, whether they live in the West or under Islamic governments, should be encouraged. Every effort to pressure these governments to change unjust laws should be supported. Western feminists and female Western leaders have a simple choice to make. Either excuse the inexcusable or demand reform in cultures and religious doctrines that continue to oppress women. Nothing illustrates this better than what happened in Cologne, Germany on New Year's Eve 2015. That night, during the city's traditional celebrations, numerous German women, 467 at the last count, reported being sexually harassed or assaulted by men of North African and Arab origin. Within 2 months, 73 suspects had been identified, most of them from North Africa. 12 of them have been linked to sexual crimes. Yet, in response to the attacks, Cologne's feminist mayor Henriette Reker issued an arm's-length guideline to women. Just keep an arm's-length distance between you and a mob of Arab men, she advised Cologne's female population, and you will be fine. Mayor Reker's comments underline the seriousness of the problem. A culture clash is upon us. The first step in resolving it is to unapologetically defend the values that have allowed women to flourish. Feminists with their organizations, networks, and lobbying power need to be on the front lines of this battle. Their relevance depends on it. And so does the well-being of countless women, Western and non-Western. I'm Ayaan Hirsi Ali of Harvard University for Prager University.
Every time I see her writings or see her posts, I will always share them with my listeners. In this particular case, people who listen to the podcast will have the opportunity to hear this presentation. Okay, it's time to get back to work here, so let's do that. And there, and there. 10:06, we begin hour number 2 of today's Charles Freedman program on radio, on SantaCruzVoice.com. Telephone number to reach the program is 831-265-5050. As we sometimes do, we had a caller who called in towards the end of the last hour and was still making a presentation at the time when we ran out of time. So we've offered him the opportunity to stick around. Let's see if Phil is still there. Hi there. Thank you for sticking around. No? Hello, Phil. Are you there? Nope, it sounds as if he was unable to stick around during the break. Okay.
You still on?
Are you there? Hello? No. Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and drop the call then. And Phil, if you want to call back to the program later on, you're more than welcome to do so. Always happy to hear from you.
Hi. All right. Good enough.
There we go. Okay. What time we got? 10:08. Let's move on to another topic. Friday, of course, means Kimberly Strassel has her observations, which I love to share with people because, again, this is one of those people I have tremendous respect for. She's talking this week about the this big kerfluffle that's going on around congressional gerrymandering and redrawing of lines. She makes the point that essentially Democrats are picking a fight here that they're going to come out of the short end of. Why is that? Well, I'll share her observations with you and offer some of my comments on them as we go along. Watching Democrats blow up over Texas redistricting is like watching Flick respond to a triple dog dare in A Christmas Story. It didn't end well for Flick. Democrats might have, well, stuck their tongue to a frozen flagpole. It started out with a simple war of words. You're full of beans, and so's your old man. Oh, yeah? Yeah. Republicans need to improve their keen to improve their midterm chances, are aggressively redistricting Texas with an eye to gaining 5 seats in the House of Representatives. Democrats, furious that Republicans might do what Democrats do, erupted in feigned outrage. This has been part of this narrative for as many years as I can remember. Listeners to this program have heard the truth. Gerrymandering has been going on forever. Both parties do it. But the Democratic mantra for all these years has been, look at those horrible Republicans doing this. They actually make a presentation, and once again, talk about the big lie. This would make Joseph Goebbels blush. Democrats would have you believe that gerrymandering is a Republican concept. They never even thought of it. It's too foul, too evil. No, we wouldn't do such a thing. It's those awful Republicans. I'm sorry, but if you believe that, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn you need to see. They condemn a partisan, craven political power grab attempt by the President of the United States, in the words of Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey. If left at that, Republicans probably would have contained their cynical gerrymander ambitions to Texas, maybe even suffered voter blowback for this partisan move. The left's mistake was to take the dare and escalate. Democratic governors fanned out to declare they had no choice but to redraw their own lines. It's a mystery what Democrats thought they'd accomplish beyond provoking Republicans to escalate further. In a nationwide redistricting race, Democrats don't have much running room. They've already gerrymandered the dickens out of their states. Where do they think Republicans got the idea? Consider New Jersey. Democrats control 9 of 12 congressional seats, so they have a 9-3 majority. Despite 45% of votes for Congress going to Republicans. Illinois, Democrats 14 out of 17. Democrats only won 53% of the vote. In Oregon, Democrats hold 5 seats out of 6. Miss Healy's Massachusetts, where Democrats have all 9 seats. Here's a bit of math provided by the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee. Shows how effective the party has been at gerrymandering. States with Democratic state legislatures currently control the lines for about 35 Republican seats. That's all that's left after their gerrymandering. By contrast, Republican state legislatures control the lines for 55 Democratic seats. The difference is the GOP advantage in the war Democrats have escalated. Add to this, many blue states have complicated their redistricting efforts by adopting, quote, independent, unquote, commissions. Democrats recognized the mistake years ago, tried to remedy it with national legislation foisting such commissions on every state, but Congress didn't pass it. So Governor Gavin Newsom has concocted a plan that requires first a supermajority of California lawmakers and then voters themselves to sideline the commission they embraced in 2008. Could Democrats eke out a few more seats? Sure. They're skilled at this and just as ruthless as the Republicans, but Democrats are in trouble if Republicans exercise their comparative advantage. Republicans are already redrawing Ohio, where they could gain 2 or 3 seats. The party is now actively looking to redraw Florida, Missouri, Indiana, South Carolina, and even New Hampshire. New Hampshire. I don't know if you've ever looked at the House map. New Hampshire has only 2 seats. It's a small state, has 2 seats. The district line between the 1st and 2nd District of New Hampshire has remained basically unchanged since 1882. Well, New Hampshire hasn't gained or lost any House seats since 1882. And in 1882, Republicans drew these districts essentially to make sure that the Democrats wouldn't be able to win either of them. Well, of course, political realities have shifted since then. Today, both of New Hampshire's districts are held by Democrats. But the New Hampshire legislature is still Republican. And by altering those lines, those ancient lines, that ancient line, I should say, there's only one line, there's only 2 seats. By altering that ancient line to reflect modern political realities, it would certainly be possible for the New Hampshire legislature to design at least 1 seat that would return a Republican. Frankly, I'd hate to see that done. You know me, I'm very much a traditionalist. District lines that have been kept intact for 150 years, well, there's a reason for that. And indeed, in New Hampshire, New Hampshiremen are used to it. There's much to be said for, knowing who your member of Congress is. I've made that point before. Gerrymandered districts make it more and more difficult. Who is my representative? Write your congressman. Call your congressman. Who the hell is it? Mine should be Jimmy Panetta, but it's not, because of the gerrymandering that California has already been subjected to. I'm in Zoe Lofgren's district. Who's she? She's from San Jose. What she knows about my area would fit in a thimble. I'm not offering that as a criticism of her. The districts have become unwieldy and impossible to represent because they no longer reflect communities of interest. Republicans may also use redistricting to shore up seats. Ah, yes. In Nebraska, Congressman Don Bacon, a Republican, is retiring. His district has been voting Democratic, centered on the city of Omaha. Well, the Nebraska legislature could just as easily take the city of Omaha and split it. Put half of Omaha in with one part of Republican Nebraska and another part of Omaha in with more of Republican Nebraska, and essentially guarantee that seat remains Republican. The Democrats' aggressive throwdown, both their redistricting threats and the walkout of Texas lawmakers in an effort to thwart a quorum, is also changing the political dynamic. Many state-level Republicans would prefer to leave maps alone, given potential anger from centrist voters and legal battles. But with the base getting worked up by the issue, pressure is growing to act. Oh, yeah? Yeah. In Texas, lawmakers were unenthusiastic about a map fight until President Trump made it an issue. Now they're issuing arrest warrants for Democrats who fled the state. This leads me back to what Dana Perino said. This was a fight that did not have to be picked. On the one hand, Kimberly Strassel here is making the point that in sheer political terms, Democrats can come out on the short end of this because Republicans have more ungerrymandered material in front of them than Democrats do. Democrats have already gerrymandered everything they could, and so their threat to do more, well, you're already 90% there. Go ahead. In terms of numbers of seats, that's how Kimberly Strassel is looking at this, and she has a point to make. But there's also a political dynamic here. Just as Hamas uses their sycophants and useful idiots in the media to paint Israelis as the villains in the Middle East, so in America, the Democrats on the left use their sycophants and useful idiots in the media to paint the Republicans as villains. And was it really necessary? During the war, there was a phrase, is this trip really necessary? The idea being gasoline is rationed. Are you sure you want to use some of it doing what you're doing? Well, right now we're not talking about gasoline. We're talking about political goodwill, which translates to votes, either for you or for your opponent. Dana Perino made the point a couple of days ago, this is a fight that Mr. Trump was probably not well advised to pick. Her point being that if Trump's policies turn out the way he is promising they will, and the way his supporters tell us they will, in other words, if next year America is visibly more prosperous, our economy is growing better, people are seeing improvement in the economic environment, well, you don't need to gerrymander Texas in order to get a congressional majority. After all, we already have a congressional majority with Texas's present map. So go out and fight the midterms on the current map lines and win. But at this point, obviously, the option to handle it that way no longer exists. Mr. Trump has, he has the ability to do this. So what he's done is he's taken that course of action off the table. The fight is now joined, for better or worse. It could be that Democrats have a different political goal in mind. Redistricting fight has provided the party a unifying grievance for the first time since the 2024 election. It's as nonsensical as past Democratic claims of Jim Crow election reforms and racist filibusters, but outrage sells. This is the point I was making. Thank you, Ms. Strassel, for stating it so well. Speaking of goals, the left might worry that some of the Democratic governors leading the fight, Newsom, Pritzker, have more than the party's well-being in mind. What better way to dominate the national discussion and position for a coming Democratic presidential primary than to act as resistor-in-chief to the Republican redistricting threat. Even if they failed to change maps, they still showed fight. Democratic voters are unlikely to blame them for provoking Republicans. But make no mistake, Democrats gave the Republicans an excuse to go nuclear in a war in which the left lacks fissile material. In a world where both sides are willing to maneuver for base partisan advantage, political calculations by necessity must change. Consider this a good example of failure to adapt. Kimberly Strassel putting it in very basic terms here. If you have already gerrymandered your states as effectively as you can, and then the other side begins to do the same, raising a ruckus over it isn't all that wise, because essentially you're out of ammunition. You have no further gerrymandering to do. You've already done your worst in state after state after state. And that argument actually makes a considerable amount of sense. 831-265-5050 is the telephone number. At 10:23. Before I move on to other things, there's one facet of the Middle East that I forgot to mention a little while ago. We've been spending all this time talking about Hamas and Gaza. There's also Hezbollah, which is, of course, in an entirely different area. This is to the north of Israel, southern Lebanon, and their tactic, of course, has been to make northern Israel uninhabitable by raining rockets down on the northern few miles. And bear in mind, Israel is a tiny country. If you take a few miles of territory, you've made a significant difference. And Hezbollah has essentially denied this Israeli territory to the Israeli people. Yeah, sure, show up. We'll shoot rockets. Well, during the past couple of years, Hezbollah has been handled pretty well by the Israelis. They're the ones who had the pagers that had been previously tinkered with, and at a given signal, they all blew up, killed a lot of Hamas operatives, disabled many more. And above all, can you imagine how demoralizing that would be? And then, of course, you have to start communicating by other fashions, radio, whatever, which the Israelis can then intercept and can use that to your detriment. Well, Hezbollah is now weakened to the point where it appears as if the Lebanese government, which has been unable to impose any discipline over them for many years, is actually attempting to do so. Lebanon now has its best chance in years to pull itself together. On Tuesday, the Lebanese cabinet tasked the army to draw up a plan to disarm all non-governmental forces, Hezbollah, by year's end. A goal affirmed on Thursday. The plan is due by the end of the month. Can Iran's terrorist proxy stop this attempt to recapture Lebanese sovereignty? Lebanon has essentially been subjected to internal occupation by Hezbollah for quite some time now, many years. Lebanon has a constituted elected government, but it does not have sovereignty power. It's kind of like in Mexico, there are considerable parts of the country where the Mexican government is not the authority. Rather, instead, the drug cartels are. There are places in Mexico where pitched battles have been fought between cartel forces and federal forces, and the cartel forces have won. It's kind of like if back in the day, if the FBI and Al Capone got into a pitched battle and Capone won. Obviously, that never happened. Whenever the FBI showed up with significant force and decided it was going to destroy something, arrest some people, end something, they did it. This is the United States of America. And when the FBI acts against a criminal organization, they win. Always. Well, again, that is not the case in certain countries. And in Lebanon, for some time now, Hezbollah has been perfectly capable and has essentially banned the official Lebanese government from a considerable part of the nation of Lebanon. Hezbollah will do what it can to delay and obstruct, keeping the state weak and the government army a bystander to the war waged from Lebanon on Iran's behalf. But after Israel embarrassed Hezbollah last autumn, eliminating Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, and nearly all his top commanders and much of its missile arsenal, they've been on the defensive at home. In July, Lebanon's central bank banned financial institutions from dealing with Hezbollah's Al-Qard Al-Hassan Bank. The government has also had success breaking Hezbollah's grip on Beirut's airport. Such efforts are especially important since the fall of Syria's Assad regime. A fruit of Hezbollah's weakness disrupted Iran's smuggling route to Lebanon. This was the path by which the Ayatollah and Iran moved assets of all sorts, war material, cash, whatever, into the hands of Hezbollah. They moved it through Syria. Assad is now gone. That door is closed, and Hezbollah is cut off from their source of resupply. Hezbollah's saving grace has been its ability to turn out Shia Muslim masses, as demonstrated at Nasrallah's funeral in February, and municipal elections in May. As Lebanon tries to establish a monopoly on force, Hezbollah still has many cards to play, says David Daoud, Foundation for Defensive Democracies, the Shia card foremost among them. To stave off disarmament, Hezbollah may not need to turn to its black shirts or deploy violence internally. A mere whiff of a threat to sectarian conflict could disrupt the agenda of Prime Minister Nawaf Salam and President Joseph Aoun, as Lebanon remains scarred by its civil war that lasted 15 years. If Hezbollah, with the help of its allies in the Amal party, can paint disarmament as an attack on Shiites, it may be able to exercise a sectarian veto. Iran has praised Hezbollah for resisting the Lebanese state, and Amal's decision to join Hezbollah in walking out of Tuesday's and Thursday's cabinet meetings is a bad sign. Naim Qassem, the new leader of Hezbollah, rejected disarmament in a Tuesday speech and told Lebanese government not to waste time on the storms created by external dictates, along with continued Israeli strikes against Hezbollah's efforts to reconstitute its forces. U.S. pressure has been instrumental in getting Lebanon to keep squeezing Hezbollah. Unlike after the 2006 Israel-Hezbollah war, when Lebanon wriggled out of its commitments, pressure will need to be sustained. A new proposal from U.S. envoy Tom Barak sets strong deadlines for Lebanese action, but would functionally reduce pressure on Hezbollah by freezing Israel's targeted strikes. The Trump administration can help later this month by not reorganizing the never-ending UN peacekeeping mission that covers for Hezbollah. But in the end, Lebanon will have its choice to make. Does it have the will to function like a real state again? Well, for many years it's been, does it have the ability? And that is still part of the equation, so this is not something that's a slam dunk one way or the other. Therefore, we'll continue to keep an eye on it on this program. It's 10:30. Let's grab a momentary break here. I'd like to remind everybody the telephone number to reach the program is 831-265-5050. Conversation on issues I've raised is welcome, or let's talk about something else. You name it, and we'll discuss it.
Save money on airfare to anywhere. Low Cost Air is the discount supermarket for all domestic and foreign airlines. A funny thing is going to happen when you call Low Cost Air. You're going to talk to a human being within 60 seconds. Save money on airfare to anywhere. Call Low Cost Air to compare at 800-704-1662. 800-704-1662.
Deer fence, wood fence, livestock chain link, vinyl, iron fence, Cypress Coast fence, Cypress Coast fence.
My name is Stephen Digger. My wife and I live in Royal Oak. When my wife and I were looking to find someone to build our fence, Cypress Coast Fence was highly recommended. It was amazing. These folks are masters at their craft. They're super professional. They came in when they said they were going to come in. They finished when they said they were going to finish. The fence is perfect for our needs, everything they said it was going to be, and then some.
Give us a call for your no-obligation consultation at 831-783-1500 or at cypresscoastfence.com.
We don't just build fences, we make good neighbors.
Deer fence, wood fence, livestock chain link, vinyl, iron fence, Cypress Coast fence, Cypress Coast fence.
The Hook is California's first ever cannabis outlet. 100% locally owned and operated, we're here to be your friendly neighborhood hookup. We believe that everyone should have access to fairly priced cannabis, so we work hard to get it to you for 30 to 50% less than the other guys. If you're 21 or older with a valid ID, visit us in Capitola or in Watsonville today. We're here to be your friendly neighborhood hookup. Check out our website, hookoutlet.com, for deals and stay groovy.
Welcome back. I'm Charles Freedman, halfway point in today's program, and it's a great time for you to make that telephone call we've been discussing. Right now, there's quite a bit of time before the next top of the hour. That top of the hour break is a hard break. The machinery seizes control, and if we're in mid-sentence, it just stops us. But if you call before that, if you have plenty of time, like, for example, making that call right now, we got plenty of time. I don't have to hurry you along. You could have all the time in the world to state what you want to state, make the case you want to make, explain what you have to explain. Inform us about whatever it is you want us to know about. 831-265-5050 is the telephone number, 831-265-5050. I'm going to take an opportunity once again to promote the annual Republican barbecue, which is coming up on August 23rd. That will be a Saturday, noon to 5. Get your tickets by going to SantaCruzRepublicans.com, SantaCruzRepublicans.com, and they'll, there will be 4 candidates, 4 people running for the Republican nomination for governor of California. There's a 5th one, Sheriff Chad Bianco of Riverside County, who will be unable to be there. But Steve Hilton, Leo Zaki, Daniel Mercuri, and Che An will all be there. And you'll have an opportunity to see them and take your measure of them, decide what you think. Once again, this is only part of what's going to be going on here. The major thing is the companionship, the get-together, the social aspect. It is difficult enough to be a Republican or a conservative in a place like Santa Cruz County, where literally you might not even want to put a Republican bumper sticker on your car because you're afraid somebody will key your car or smash a window or knock a nail into one of your tires. The local Democrats are aggressive. I mean, we saw what they did with Ellis at the airport. Here's a perfectly good local business that had been in existence for some time. They decided to target it, and it's gone. So it's important when we have an opportunity to get together, enjoy ourselves, meet and greet. This in itself has tremendous value. So once again, I would urge you to make your reservation for the annual Republican Party barbecue put on by the Santa Cruz County Republican Party. SantaCruzRepublicans.com. SantaCruzRepublicans.com. That's the place to go to make your reservation. And I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time. So don't hesitate. It's the 23rd. So let me see. What the hell is today? The 6th? No, the 8th. So you better get that reservation quick. This event, incidentally, has been growing by leaps and bounds. I remember the first one a few years back, a few people. The year after that, it more than doubled. We had a tremendous, and the year after that, again, a tremendous increase in the number of people showing up for this event. So this has become an annual thing. It's now very well attended. Be one of those people. Enjoy this. Meet your friends and neighbors. Once again, August 23rd. Get your reservation by going to SantaCruzRepublicans.com. Okay. While I'm on the topic of making announcements concerning upcoming Republican events, the next coffee talk with the Republican women is on the 14th. Let me see. That would be a week from yesterday. It's Thursday. And get together with, once again, your friends and neighbors, fellow Republicans, 10 a.m. to noon at California Coffee, 9105 Soak Hill Drive in Aptos. And remember, this is an event promoted by the Santa Cruz Republican women. Gentlemen are welcome. Any Republican is welcome. And this isn't a fundraising event. This is just, let's get together and do a little networking and support each other and hear what each other has to say and reassure each other that we're not alone. California Coffee, 9105 Soak Hill Drive, Aptos, next Thursday, 10 o'clock in the morning. Mark is on the line. And always a pleasure to take his calls, so let's do just that. Good morning, sir. Happy Friday.
Thank you, Charles. You had a caller yesterday called in and stated that his kids were returning to school here, one of the local school districts. And I really invite him to research, one, the local district that his kids are attending, the district meetings, the board meetings, school board meetings, and then also the county office of education. And a quick way to do this is go to their websites and see what's put up there. And I think he's going to find it somewhat shocking. What's interesting here at PVSD, they just had the school board meeting, and one of the proposals they came up with is lowering the voting age to 16 for students to be able to vote in school board elections. So the 16-year-old will be able to vote for the school board trustee in the area where he lives. I wish they had done that when I was a kid in school. Vote, we're going to have lobster every day in the school cafeteria. But to think of 16
I love it. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. The thing, I don't even know if that's legal.
Well, and again, the trustees at Pajaro Valley Unified School District, I think that's an irrelevant point. The other thing, too, is, PVSD's in two different counties.
That's right.
So you're going to have to float this through Santa Cruz County and Monterey County. But to think of what would a 16-year-old add to the... I think they should speak to their parents and how their parents would vote for a trustee, and don't remove that obligation, that responsibility from the parents to vote in the interests of their child at the school. And to think that a student needs to be represented with their vote for them to to get what they need for school, I think is ridiculous. The other thing is 16-year-olds don't pay property tax, and the schools are funded through general taxation, and then through the state through the daily attendance. They get funded on that, but also on the local school bonds that are on the property where the parents live, their house.
Right.
And I think you should get some representation on your tax dollars and how they're being spent. And I don't think a 16-year-old's going to do that.
And let's make it clear here that somebody might come along and say, oh, well, then you don't think renters should be able to vote. Renters do pay property tax. That's part of what they pay in their rent. So the idea that a person who is renting does not pay property tax, well, they don't pay it directly, but they pay it.
But again, when we adults go down and vote yay or nay on a school bond, that's part of our responsibility, and we should be informed when we do so. Will the 16-year-old be able to vote on bond issues or just trustees? School board members. It's again, it just kind of shows the intellect level of what's going on in these school boards, and I really invite that parent to investigate. You can get the minutes of the school board meetings online.
Right.
They'll have the minutes there, and you can read through them. So it's there. But anyhow, what's going on in the local schools? My children went to Aptos High, and they graduated many years ago.
Uh-huh.
But we went through Aptos High at the time, and So what I did, I pulled up the Aptos High calendar of events. This is from Aptos High School.
Yeah.
And this is the 2025, 2026 calendar events. August is back to school.
Uh-huh.
And GSA ramp up. GSA is the Gay Straight Alliance. So we're going to ramp that up. September, we're going to have Suicide Prevention Awareness Week. Well, good. We're going to have 15th is going to be Latinx History Month. I didn't think we're supposed to use Latinx anymore. They found that offensive. But it goes on from there. The 16th, 22nd is going to be Bisexual Awareness Week. And the 23rd is going to be Bisexuality Day. This is the high school, and this is on their website. October, LGBTQ History Month. The 8th is International Lesbian Day. The 10th, Indigenous Peoples Day. Oh, fine. The 11th, National Coming Out Day.
Oh,
The 15th, International Pronouns Day. November, Native American Heritage Month. Oh, fine. The 3rd, Transgender Parent Day.
Oh, good
8th,
Lord.
Intersex Solidarity Day. 14th, GSA Day for Gender Justice. 13th through 19th, Trans Awareness Week. 20th, Trans Day of Remembrance / Resilience. The one on December is kind of interesting.
Well, your point is
The
taken.
8th is
I've got Mark. I've got 2 callers holding, so I'm going to cut in here.
One quick point. One quick point, Charles.
Yeah.
Okay, the 8th is Pansexuals and Pan-Aromatic Day, Pride Day, which is interesting. But my point is, all this is focused on these children's sex, sexual identity, how they have sex, and who they have it with. Right now, the LA School District is facing a $2 billion lawsuit of sexual misconduct between teachers and students. $2 billion. The state of California is approaching $4 billion. I think the teachers that are the administrators of these events, of these clubs, need to stay away from these kids and focus on art, history, sports, whatever they can woodshop, but not this transgender, transsexual day and coming out day. It's grooming at its worst, and it's what's going on in our local schools.
Well put, and I would certainly give that a big amen. If there's one thing that high school students don't need, it's more of an emphasis on sexuality in the schools. They get plenty of that.
Correct.
From popular culture. They get plenty of it from their peers, etc. You'd think there'd be one place where they would go where the emphasis would be on something else, like academic accomplishment.
Sports, art, history, anything, but not this. This is wrong. And again, I invite the parent that called in the other day, look into your local schools. Just look on their websites, and you're going to be somewhat amazed at what's going on there.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Appreciate it. Okay, I have got, this is embarrassing. I got a couple of people here on hold. One of them has called earlier today, so I'm going to take the new caller. That would be, let me see here. I don't have a name, but let's go ahead and take the call. Hi there, how you doing?
Hey, Charles. Yeah, it's Evan. Great conversation. I know you have your other caller waiting, so I'll be very short here. And again, happy Friday, and hope you have a good weekend too there, Charles. When I start reading here, 2024, Oakland and Berkeley passed measure Q and measure Y, allowing 16 to 17-year-olds to vote in school board elections, at first in California. These measures were enabled by a 2020 state law, Proposition 18, that amended the California Constitution to allow local jurisdictions to lower voting age for local elections subject to voter approval. This looks like it's going to probably happen. So, unfortunately, we have crazy people. But I'm just going to leave it at that, and have your other caller come in. So I appreciate it there, Charles. Thanks again.
Evan, thank you for the information. Ghastly though it is, good Lord, you got to wonder sometimes. This is the reason why it's important not to elect morons, because then you get moronic policies, and this is a prime example of that. The idea of having 16 and 17-year-olds voting in elections. These are minors. They are not yet able. Not only can they not buy a drink, they can't sign a contract. They can't legally join the military or anything else. They're just, until you're 18, you're a kid. I guess the one thing that we do let people under 18 do, we allow them to get driver's licenses, and always had. There's a practical end to that, but golly, the idea that we would confer a franchise on people who've never actually been members of the community in the sense that they were, self-supporting individuals called upon to actually be responsible citizens. No, that makes no sense at all. But thank you, Mark, for letting us know that it's probably coming soon to a place near you. Phil has called us back earlier. I don't know where you went, buddy, but I tried to reach you at the top of the last hour, and evidently you had something else you had to do. But I'm glad you called back.
Yes, I apologize for that. What happened was I'm at the gym, and I ran into an old friend, and that took priority over speaking to you, and I'm sorry about that. So I also missed the earlier part right up until Mark's call. I missed that. But I wanted, before we go back to that original topic, I wanted to share something really valuable that I think you'll appreciate, and especially Mark will appreciate. This friend that I ran into is a real techie, and she showed me an app called Copilot, which I installed on my phone. You can ask this Copilot any obscure question, and it immediately comes up with an answer within seconds. So I asked it. I said, "Okay, here's a difficult question."
But the real question, Phil, is does it come up with the correct answer? Anybody can come up. Anybody can come up with an answer. I can do that.
I asked her. Yeah, I asked her about it, but the answer I got looked reasonable. And the question I had, it was one that I asked you. I said, when record shops used to sell 78 RPM records, did the royalties from side A and side B go equally to the composers? I figured it's not going to know that, but right away it gave me an answer. It says, yes, in general, it was split equally regardless of the popularity of the A side versus the B side. And then it lists some exceptions to that rule. I mean, this is research that if you went to a public library and tried to do the old-fashioned way, it would probably take hours for you to find an answer, if you even got one at all.
Right.
And here, this artificial intelligence, it just blows my mind. Like within seconds, it gives you all this detail. So I urge Mark and your other listeners and yourself to try it out. Try some difficult music questions and see if you get the right answer every time.
Okay, what is the name of it again?
Copilot. It's an app. It's a cell phone app.
Copilot.
And what you do is you use them. Yeah, Copilot. You use the microphone on your keyboard to speak your question, and then it will type out the answer.
Wow. Fascinating. I should let people know before I began the program today, I had an email from Phil asking that exact question. So, suppose, for example, Artie Shaw's recording of Begin the Beguine, which was a huge hit. What's on the other side? Indian Love Call. A swing arrangement of Indian Love Call. Incidentally, Indian Love Call was the A side. And nobody expected Begin the Beguine to be any big deal. They put that on the B side just to fill the space out. Well, what happened? The record was released. Begin the Beguine is a smash hit, and over 1 million copies are sold. So the amount of royalties, even though it's like a royalty of what, a penny a record or 2 cents a record or something like that. I guess it's a penny because after all, Bluebird Records sold for only 35 cents. But when you're selling 1 million records, 1 million pennies adds up to some money. And the question that Phil asked was, are the royalties are the royalties split evenly here? Because you don't know which side's going to be the big hit. So did Cole Porter? Let me see who wrote Indian Love Call. I can't remember. Cole Porter wrote Begin the Beguine, but Porter would have gotten half the royalties. And whoever wrote Indian Love Call, Rudolph Frimmel or whoever the hell it was, would have gotten the other half, even though he was kind of piggybacking on the back side of this smash hit. And I wrote him back. I said, I think that's the way it was, but I wasn't absolutely sure. So Phil has now called us and said, well, I found this app called Copilot, and I asked it the question. I found out that actually what I told Phil, I guess I was right, and that the royalties were evenly split either way. But it's interesting, I guess, that this app, Copilot, it would be useful for a lot of other questions besides this rather arcane one about royalties of musical selections. Anyway, thank you for the tip.
Yeah. What started that question, by the way, last night I was looking up something in book pop music for Roz, and I happened to come across Tutti Camerata. He had a one hit that charted called Return to Paradise. And I said to Roz, well, the song my father wrote, All I Desire, is on the flip side of that. And that's what engendered the question. I said, did my father collect royalties based on the sale of Return to Paradise? And apparently the answer is yes. He shared equally in a record where his song was not the hit.
Camerata was a trumpet player and arranger with Jimmy Dorsey, and he wrote. There's a record I have of a tune called, you're going to love this one, "Shoot the Meatballs to Me, Dominic Boy," and this is.
I don't know that.
This is an instrumental, a swing number by Tutti Camerata, but later on. After Mr. Camerata went further in his career, when Annette Funicello became a breakout star with her appearances on the Mickey Mouse Club and began making records as a girl singer, the music behind Annette Funicello was conducted by Camerata. By that time, he had started using just the single name, but it was the same guy. And so he went from Jimmy Dorsey to Annette Funicello in, say, 10 years or so.
Well, you know why he went to Annette Funicello? Because when Disneyland opened, Walt Disney hired him as music director for Disneyland, because that was the style of music that was popular in whatever year it was, 1954, I think, when Disneyland opened.
Uh-huh.
And he put out some albums at that time under the Disneyland label. I think I have some of them. I believe some of them are named for seasons: spring, autumn, summer, winter.
That would cover them all.
And that would cover them all. And I think I have at least. I think I have 2 of them.
Oh, my God.
My dad became friends with him later, and I remember visited him at his home in Union, New Jersey, which is a suburb of Newark. And I think he passed away shortly thereafter, and then my dad did after that.
Well, I did not know that he was music director for all of the Disney enterprises. I'd seen his name on the record labels and remembered that, hey, isn't that an old Jimmy Dorsey sideman? Yeah, same guy. So quite a varied career, I would say.
Yes, and there are also 2 excellent albums that I have that I used to hear played on the radio, but stations don't play that stuff anymore. Tootie's Trumpets and Tootie's Trombones. The arrangements in those records are just fabulous, and the personnel, I don't recall them all, like Toots Mondello and so on. They're all names that you would know. They were famous sidemen to very well-known bands, and he put them together and made those albums.
Sounds like something
you may be able to find them on. I think you can find them on CDs now if they still make them.
Well, I'd look for them online. You'd probably be able to find them on YouTube. Thanks for the tip.
Yeah, somebody YouTube might be there, or through eBay you can probably find the actual LP albums.
I wonder if that's on the Buena Vista label or on. There actually were records put out under a Disneyland label, but generally it was like with his motion pictures, they'd use the Buena Vista name as their production company.
I think they were Buena Vista, but I would have to look. When I get home, I will, if I have time, I will check, see what label it's on. But those are excellent LPs. As soon as I heard them played on the radio back in the 70s, I scoured record shops and found, because there were still record shops carrying old stock in those days, I found a couple of old record shops, and I eventually picked up the trumpet one and the trombone one.
Congratulations. Good hunting.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm a record freak.
Well, thank you very much for getting back to us and finishing up your comments. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again next time.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Time is getting, yeah, that's right. We got about 40 seconds left before the next top of the hour news break begins. That's going to be the 11 o'clock one, so we've still got an hour left. Hour number 3 coming up on the Charles Freedman radio program. 831-265-5050 continues to be our telephone number. We've had several participants today. I want to thank each and every one of them for taking the time to join us. And I'm looking forward to more of the same in the third hour. Just now, time for me to take a 6-minute break here. I will be right back. Hour number 3 coming up on the Charles Freedman program. Okay, what do we got here? Well, keep hearing about the moderate Muslims. Where are they anyway?
After every new jihadist attack against the West, politicians reassure us that the atrocity does not represent the true nature of mainstream Islam. Of the 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, they constantly reassure us the overwhelming majority are as law-abiding as any members of any other monotheistic faith. Only a tiny fraction engage in terror, and Islam is a religion of peace. Furthermore, we are told the great majority of Muslims hold moderate views. But what does that mean? How moderate are moderate Muslims? Given the threat of radical Islam, it would seem to be a fair question. Let me start to answer it by telling you something of my own story. I was raised in a middle-class Muslim home in Cairo, Egypt. Growing up, I was told, among many other things, the following: that every day that passes on the Islamic nation without a caliphate is a sin. that the failures and miseries of the Muslim world started the moment we Muslims gave up conquests and wars against the infidels. That our prosperity depended on conquering new lands and converting new believers. That anyone who leaves the faith must die. And I also remember how my teachers and my mosque imams reacted to the news of 9/11 when it happened. Joy. My experience was typical, and there is data to prove it. According to the Pew Research Center, 88% of Muslims in Egypt, 62% in Pakistan, 86% in Jordan, and 51% in Nigeria believe that any Muslim who chooses to leave Islam should be put to death. Similar, if not identical numbers, are in favor of stoning people who commit adultery, severely punishing those who criticize Muhammad or Islam, and chopping off hands for theft. All of these practices are a part of the penal code of Islamic law, which is known as Sharia. And 84% of Muslims in South Asia, 77% in Southeast Asia, 74% in the Middle East and North Africa, and 64% in Sub-Saharan Africa support Sharia as the law of the land. Less drastic, yet significant percentages are to be found even among Muslim communities in the West. So too, most of the world's Muslims believe that any acts of violence against Israel, including suicide bombers in buses and restaurants, are justified. Now, does any of this sound moderate to you? Yet, if anyone raises these inconvenient truths here in the West, he is sure to be called an Islamophobe, a hater of Islam. Again, my own story is instructive. In February of 2015, I was yelled at, cursed at, and successfully prevented from speaking at Swarthmore College by students and others who did not agree to what I was saying. Some of them were Muslim women who fit the image of the unveiled, perfect English-speaking moderate Muslim young woman. Other seeming moderates tried and failed to do the same during my speech at Temple University the next day. Some of them, sadly, were students of journalism. It is not Islamophobic to note the tragic fact that at this time in history, the Muslim world is dominated by bad ideas and bad beliefs. That is why millions of so-called moderate Muslims do not rise up to denounce Islamic terror. Because the word moderate, as we understand it, does not really apply. If moderation means you tolerate freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, women's rights, and gay rights, moderate Muslims are a distinct minority. Of course they exist, millions of them, but among believing Muslims, they do not represent anywhere near a critical mass. The values of the West and the values of Islam, as practiced in the Muslim worlds of the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia, and more in Europe, are not compatible. Western politicians can deny this, but this denial does not change the reality. It is these bad ideas and beliefs that provides the soil in which radical Islam grows. Ignoring this only prevents us from effectively fighting Islamist terror, and at the same time, it hurts those heroic Muslims who really are moderate. Until we begin to tell the truth about Islam, always in respectful language, the only solution to Islamist terror will never take place. That solution is Islam reforming itself. I do believe that reform is possible. It can, of course, only be done from within Islam. The West can be a part of that reform, but only if it faces and tells the truth. The sooner it does so, the better for all of us. I am Hussein Abu Bakr for Prager University.
Well, timing of that came out very well. Just ready to go back to work here. time is now 11:06. Hour number 3 begins. Time 2. Telephone number remains the same, 831-265-5050. I've often made the point that when I do this program, every day I learn something. Sometimes I learn something that I really didn't want to know. For example, in the second hour, we had a caller call up and say that the local school board, Powder Valley Unified School District, now has a proposal that 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds be allowed to vote in school board elections. I am no more comfortable with that than I am with the idea that we had seen hatched in some polities, some cities, that people who are not citizens should be permitted to vote in elections. Being of the age of 18 and a United States citizen, I think are bedrock qualifications for suffrage in this country. I don't have a problem saying that. I don't believe that by doing that I'm being pejorative or discriminatory. I'm saying there are certain qualifications, in terms of buy-in, I guess I'd say. You have to have skin in the game. If you're a U.S. citizen, you have skin in the game of who runs the country. If you're 18 or over, you are either at or fast approaching the age at which you will be responsible for your own upkeep. Now, admittedly, there have been more and more examples lately. We hear of people in their 20s and even in their 30s still living at home in mom's basement. There's a question, should a person like that be able to vote? Well, unfortunately, the way the laws are written, you can't say, well, if you're over 18 and responsible for yourself, you could vote, but if you're over 18 and still living at home with mom and dad, you can't. We can't make those distinctions. As sooner or later, you simply have to say, okay, if you're 18 years old, you're a certain age, and 18 is the one we've chosen, you have the suffrage available to you. But the idea of extending it to people under that age does not appeal to me at all. And now I learn that California passed a law, and Evan told us that this was back in 2020, so it's several years ago, that allows local governing boards to drop the voting age subject to voter approval. He made the point that Oakland and Berkeley have already done this, and I can see the shall we say, people of questionable judgment who vote in Oakland and Berkeley. Look at the quality of those communities, and I think you'll see my allegation there of questionable judgment borne out. Oakland is a place where today I would not want to go. I would fear going to Oakland. Last time I was in Oakland, I felt nervous. Nothing bad happened. Don't get me wrong. Nothing evil happened. I will concede that. But the atmosphere is such that you don't feel comfortable. I mean, this is a community, after all, where a donut shop put a sign up in the window, police officers not welcome. Can you imagine throwing cops out of a donut shop, preventing them from entering, saying, no, you can't come in here. No coffee and sinkers for you, buddy. But we'll be happy to serve all the local neighborhood prostitutes, pimps, drug dealers, gangbangers, footpads, break-in artists, car hijackers, child molesters. They're all welcome. They're all welcome, but cops can go pound sand. Wow. That told me something about the city of Oakland. And given that atmosphere, I can understand that they would opt for a 16-year-old vote. I would hope that, from what Evan told me, and I haven't looked this up, but in the past when I've checked him on things like this, he's been accurate. He said that the state law allows local districts to do this subject to voter approval. So I am therefore presuming I've been bad-mouthing the voters of Oakland and Berkeley, because I'm assuming that those voters had this proposition laid before them and approved it at an election. Obviously, if that's the case, then the same would be necessary here. So what Mark was talking about is evidently the Pajaro Valley Unified School District Board is now going to put before its voters a proposal to lower the voting age for school board to 16. This is not Oakland. This is not Berkeley. It is my belief that a measure to accomplish this would not pass. I certainly would not vote for it, and most of the people I know would not. Then again, obviously, I don't know most of the people in the community. My circle of acquaintances is only so large, and the community as a whole is much bigger. Just the same, this doesn't strike me as being the kind of place where such nonsense would actually be approved. Maybe we'll have a chance to find out. I mean, this is the sort of thing that it shouldn't even be placed on the ballot in the first place. I mean, it's a waste of time. But possibly, if it is, and if it is then defeated, hopefully by a sound majority, that in itself will send a message. Furthermore, look for the silver lining to the cloud, okay? Here's the potential silver lining. The Pajaro Valley Unified School District is at present populated with people lunatic enough to promote this. They are also, from what I have been able to discover, a number of them who are raving anti-Semites. Well, that wouldn't interest the community. It's really hard to get people excited about anti-Semitism. But when people are saying, hey, look, this lunatic wanted to give the vote to 16 and 17-year-olds, perhaps such an overreach, perhaps such a political faux pas would then give opposition candidates to these school board members an issue that they could use to carry to the community and say, look, you don't want this guy on the board. Let's have somebody with a little bit better sense. So there is the potential silver lining. If this ill-conceived measure is put forward and is defeated, that's a good thing. But if it then leads to the defeat of the people who put it there for us to vote on, that would be an even better thing. Such are the fevered dreams I cherish. I'm Charles Freedman. Reach me at 831-265-5050. I would be very, very happy to speak with you. I haven't said anything for the last few days about what's going on in Ukraine, but there are some new developments. Mr. Trump seems to be of the opinion that he can reach some accommodation here. I think he still cherishes the idea that somehow he is going to be able to convince Vladimir Putin to make some kind of a deal. I wonder if he's true. I don't know. I mean, look at the human circumstances here. Look at the case of Victoria Honcharuk. Now, she was doing pretty well. She had it all. She had a bright future. She was working at Morgan Stanley, living in Manhattan, and she had enough of a salary to live comfortably there. Then Russia invaded Ukraine, and I reevaluated my life. She returned home to Ukraine and volunteered as a combat medic. I asked her bluntly, do you expect to grow old? For me, it's not a question of growing old, she said. This is a 25-year-old woman. And if you're still one of those people who cherishes the idea, oh, women don't really have courage, women don't have commitment, come on. Look at what this young woman has done and is doing. I accept almost every single time I go for an evacuation, I might be killed. But that's okay with me. I hope essentially that Ukraine will survive. and because we are contributing to fighting the greatest evil on this earth. My God. What a... When this woman has children, those children are going to be so lucky to have a woman with this kind of a mentality and a moral compass as a mother. The West contemplates a path to peace mainly in political and pragmatic terms. Ukrainians see the war in moral and existential terms. That's how they maintain their will, even as they look at what is going to be the bleakest winter of the war so far. Negotiations have yielded little, except the exchange of prisoners of war. Now, here is something I had not realized. Ukrainian prisoners often return from captivity skeletal, with tales of beatings and torture, fingernails torn out, electric shocks administered to their genitals. I did not know that Russia was submitting Ukrainian war prisoners to such incredible brutality. Calculated torture. I mean, tough living conditions is one thing, but this is off the scale. And once again, we're led to comparisons with those who provide a scale for atrocity. U.S. prisoners who were held as prisoners of war by Nazi Germany did not come back reporting anything of this nature. This is ghastly. So no wonder Ukrainians, I mean, this motivates you to fight. When you see that your enemy is doing this, no wonder she describes them as the greatest evil on this earth. Russia bombards Ukrainian cities far behind the front, killing civilians who fail to flee their beds quickly enough. Last month, the governor of the southern region of Kherson accused the Russians of ruthlessly and deliberately killing a 14-month-old boy with a drone. Ukrainians call such acts evil. Is there any other word for them? This framing also helps explain Ukrainians' insistence against territorial concessions. A poll published this month found that only 38% of Ukrainians would accept some losses for peace. 52%, a clear majority, firmly against territorial concessions, although the latter number has declined somewhat since 2022. 68% oppose official recognition of Russian control of occupied territories. 78% reject the surrender of regions not currently under Russian control, as Vladimir Putin has demanded. How about de facto recognition of Russian control without de jure recognition? Well, that's more palatable to Ukrainians. Still more oppose it than support it. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Bogdan Kotevich says Ukraine could sacrifice territory if it were uninhabited, but there are people. He is a native of Crimea, which Russia seized in 2014, and he fought in Mariupol, which Russia destroyed in 2022. Russian occupation is not just changing one state flag to another, says Oleg Matviachuk, head of the Center for Civil Liberties, a Ukrainian non-governmental organization that shared the 2022 Nobel Peace Prize. The group documents war crimes. Ms. Marchivchuk says she fears we will reach the moment when even the severe skeptics will have no doubt this is a genocide. But it will be too late for us. Genocide can entail mass slaughter, but the legal definition is broader. Under the United Nations 1948 Genocide Convention, remember this was written right after we witnessed a genuine genocide, Adolf Hitler's campaign to exterminate the Jewish people. Genocide entails both intent to destroy, in whole or in part, an entire people, and at least one of several constituent acts. The U.S. considers China's forced sinicization of the Uyghurs a genocide. Similarly, Mr. Putin is working to eliminate Ukraine as a language and ethnicity, as an identity and culture, and as an independent state. This according to Frederick Kagan of the American Enterprise Institute. He says this is explicitly a genocidal intent. I have stated on numerous occasions that in my view the Russian and Ukrainian people are essentially one people. Vladimir Putin says this In that sense, we see Ukraine as ours. Kremlin officials and state-run media routinely make similar statements. There is no other option. No one should remain alive in Ukraine, claimed a recent op-ed in the state-run publication RIA Novosti. Constituent acts of genocide include killing or causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. In 2022, in the Kiev suburbs of Butka and Irpin, retreating Russian soldiers left behind mass graves and civilian bodies bearing signs of torture, sexual violence, and summary execution. Witnesses described how those trying to flee were regularly shot at and killed for no apparent reason. A United Nations report recounted similar depredations have been discovered in other liberated areas and reported from occupied territory. That sort of thing is very intentional. It's very distinct from incidents like the bombing of Dresden, says Carolina Heard of the Institute for the Study of War. There's no military benefit. The forcible transfer of children from one group to another is another constituent act. Ukrainian authorities say they have information in nearly 20,000 cases. 20,000 Ukrainian children have been kidnapped to Russia. This I had heard about. This is incredible. The real number is likely much higher. Daria Zarivna, executive director of Bring Kids Back, an initiative of President Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukrainians are horrified by what Ms. Zareva describes as a large-scale state policy of militarizing Ukrainian children, forcibly transferring children who are the most vulnerable, but youth in occupied territories are also pushed into military training, including the operation of drones, tactical medical instruction. Russia is preparing them to fight against their own country, Ukraine, as soon as they're 18. Many Ukrainians therefore feel they are fighting for the moral future of their children. That is the foundation. Russia is built on the principle of the suppression of an individual by the state. We are different. We are not Russians. In The Origins of Totalitarianism, written back in 1951, Hannah Arendt described the methods the Nazi and Soviet states used to shatter individual will and render masses ready for subjugation. One step is the murder of the moral person of the man. The state accomplishes this by making the decisions of conscience absolutely questionable and equivocal, by creating a situation in which the alternative is no longer between good and evil, but between murder and murder. The quintessential moral dilemma is that of a mother allowed by the Nazis to choose which of her 3 children should be killed. William Styron fictionalized this dilemma in his 1979 novel, Sophie's Choice. That's the temptation Ukraine faces as it continues sacrificing some families ostensibly to save others. Many Ukrainians have loved ones in occupied regions. Giving it up is not giving it up to keep quiet there. It's giving them up for destruction. It's giving up your friend, or your brother, or your cousin. Choose one child to survive and you become complicit in the killing of the other. Sophie chooses, but the choice destroys her. Many Ukrainians believe that consenting to such a compromise is immoral. Such a concession would open up an endless chain of Sophie's choices with the ultimate goal of total absorption and destruction. Ukrainians reject Russia's offer of a choice between wrong and wrong. When you see what Russia brings, the mass graves, the forced deportations, torture of civilians, you stop romanticizing compromise. Ms. Hancharak, the combat medic, texts me en route to the front. This isn't about politics, it's about dignity, about never having to look a child in the eyes and explain that you gave up their future just to stay alive a little longer. This is something that I think too few people in the West are aware of. I've often spoken about how in the Israeli-Hamas conflict, Israel is fighting for its existence. Israel is perfectly willing to grant recognition and status to a Palestinian state, provided that Palestinian state is willing to reciprocate, grant recognition and legitimacy to Israel. That the Palestinians resolutely refuse to do, and when one steps forward who will, he can be assassinated by Hamas or the PLO or whoever else is around who understands that any accommodation with the Israeli state or any recommendation of such is punishable by death. This is about as clear-cut as you can get in terms of the intention of one people to exterminate another and their unwillingness to retreat from that goal, that vision. Does the same dynamic prevail in the Russia-Ukraine war? This particular piece, written by Gillian K. Melchior, is an illustration of why that may be the case and why certainly Ukrainians can be understood to be seeing it that way. It is a reminder, once again, of something that happened in Ukraine many years ago when Operation Barbarossa was launched. Adolf Hitler launched his forces into the Soviet Union. Well, obviously, the first place they trod was Ukraine, the Ukraine Soviet Socialist Republic. Ukrainians had been suffering under Joseph Stalin's dictatorship. Millions of their number had perished in the famines he had inflicted upon them. Untold numbers more had simply disappeared into the Gulag, never to be seen again. When the Germans invaded Ukraine, the Ukrainians welcomed them. I can't remember any place else. The Poles, the Czechs, the French, they did not welcome the invading Nazi hordes with open arms. Ukraine did. They brought them bread. And this was followed by one of the most outrageous and insane decisions that showed just why Adolf Hitler really was irrational. In his thinking, we hear a lot of people scream these days about racism. Hitler was truly the ultimate racist. A person's race determined everything you needed to know about them. There was no such thing as a decent, good, or valuable Jew. They were all Jews. Their race condemned them. Get a hold of Einstein, gas him. Just one more Jew. This same mindset led Adolf Hitler to characterize the Ukrainians as Slavs, Slavic people. The word Slav is rather easily derived from slaves. And indeed, that is exactly how Adolf Hitler viewed the Slavic peoples. They would be slaves to their German overlords. So Hitler really managed to accomplish something incredibly difficult. He made the Ukrainians hate him and the Germans more than they already hated the Russians. Now, at that point, you are entitled to shake your head and say, wow, that's quite a deal. It was. It was. The Ukrainians were welcoming the Germans as liberators. You are saving us from the Soviet, that Stalin guy, these Russians. It's terrible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And instead of taking advantage of that, Hitler could have had a strong ally in Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. They were ready, willing, and able to help. But Hitler disabused them of that goodwill by subjecting them to indignities and atrocities beyond even Stalin's imagination. I mean, once again, what an accomplishment. So the Ukrainian people have been subjected over time to some pretty heavy abuse by some pretty bad actors invading from the outside. Ukraine has never been an aggressive country. They do not invade other countries. Haven't. Never have. But they have spent centuries under the Russian yoke. And now in the 20th century, they briefly achieved a period of national recognition, 1919, 1920. But then the Red Army came in, and once again Ukraine was put under Russian authority. That didn't work out very well for them, as I mentioned earlier. When the Soviet Union fell apart, Ukraine immediately joined other former Soviet socialist republics in proclaiming her independence. I believe she was the first. Certainly that would speak to the eagerness to be out from under the Russian yoke, finally. And what Vladimir Putin is intent upon doing is once again subjugating the Ukrainian people. We're bigger. We will use our size and strength to bend you, to coerce you, to force you, to compel you. Yeah, real liberal model there. It's half past. Let's grab a break and be back for our last segment. Time is, let me see, what is it, 11:33? Yeah, okay, here for the next 2 minutes. And during that time, great point to make a phone call, 831-265-5050.
Back in the 16th century, a famous prophet and psychic, Nostradamus, predicted great disasters. Hundreds of years later, believe it or not, a lot of his predictions have come true. Today we have another psychic and prophet among us. His name is Nostradamus. His great ability to predict when home repairs, primarily a roof, will become a much-needed thing is truly remarkable. His predictions have been renowned and recorded for many years now. Yes, Nostradamus can be found, a key owner at Knox Roofing, and he can give you accurate advice on when your roof will leak. His ability to see your home completed with only the best products and services is truly amazing. If you need a sitting with Nostradamus, all you need to do is call 461-0634, and you can receive a free reading of your home's life and its life-changing events about to occur. Okay, thanks, folks.
Treehouse dispenses not only the finest cannabis products, but information to those who want to know how to use cannabis for maximum benefit. Hello, I'm Jenna. If you would like to know how best to use cannabis, ask your friends and neighbors at Treehouse Dispensary, 3651 Soquel Drive. If you're 21 plus with a valid ID, no appointment is necessary and the information is free. Order online at ourtreehouse.io and pick up at our drive-thru. See you soon.
You need a clean, pleasant space to conduct business, but you don't want the burden of a long, expensive lease. Your solution is Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on Soquel Avenue. Satellite offers private offices, meeting and conference rooms, even co-working by the hour, day, week, or month. Schedule a tour at satellitecoworking.com. Mention Santa Cruz Voice for 20% off your first reservation.
Okay, at 11:35, back to work once again, 831-265-5050, the telephone number. We spent the last few minutes talking about the attitude of the Ukrainians toward the Russians and the war they're carrying on in Ukraine. What about the attitude of the President of the United States? A few days ago, I presented the idea that both Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump have made miscalculations. Each of them essentially misjudged the other. And this is not, a matter of, heaping coals. It's simply a matter of observation. How did Putin misjudge Trump? How did Trump misjudge Putin? Well, Trump has been very transparent, really, about what he thinks from day to day. It's is, I think, rather plain. Mr. Trump, during his campaign for the presidency last year, was saying, well, I can end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. Maybe he didn't think it would take that long, or maybe he didn't think he could do it in a day, but he felt that it was something he could accomplish rather quickly because he believed, from having already spent 4 years dealing with him, he believed that he understood Mr. Putin and that by offering Mr. Putin something valuable, something worthwhile, that he could convince him to change his policies. Accordingly, Mr. Trump offered Vladimir Putin essentially normalization of relations. There'll be economic benefits. You'll be able to sell your oil. You will facilitate your banking procedures, etc. All of these things aimed at improving the quality of life of the Russian people, thereby, one would assume, making the Russian regime more popular. Hey, look at how good things are going. Mr. Putin was not interested in this. Donald Trump miscalculated. He thought that these things would be of value to Vladimir Putin, but they were not. Rather, instead, Mr. Putin is not interested in the welfare of his people. He's not interested in the economic well-being of his country. He has now accepted 1 million casualties and is in the process of bankrupting his country because what he wants is Ukraine. He truly is bent on conquest and oppression. Mr. Trump did not understand what Mr. Putin's real motivator was. And for Putin's part, how did he misjudge Donald Trump? Well, Mr. Putin believed that he could essentially make nice noises, and Mr. Trump has said this. He says, well, I have these conversations with Putin, and he says all kinds of great things, and the next day he's killing more babies. That's exactly right. That's exactly what's been going on. And Mr. Putin felt that after a length of time, after a certain amount of this behavior, that Donald Trump would lose patience. And that when he lost patience, he would simply walk away. He'd say, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I don't want any part of it. I'm not going to become involved. I'm not going to give Ukraine any more assistance. I'm out of here. That's what Putin thought Trump would do. Again, just as Trump misjudged Putin, Putin misjudged Trump. Trump has no intention of allowing the United States of America, his country, and the West in general, which he has spoken very eloquently and positively about, be humiliated by this asp in human form who seems to think that the worse he behaves, the more he'll get. So where are we now? 10 days ago, Mr. Trump gave Vladimir Putin 10 days to negotiate seriously or suffer serious consequences. Mr. Trump has already undertaken a rearrangement of the American aid, military aid to Ukraine. There were a number of people in America complaining, we're sending all of this military hardware to Ukraine. They get, all of these billions of dollars worth of stuff, and we're essentially, this is a gift on our part. And it seems to be open-ended. It just seems to go on and on. We've got a big deficit here. We can't afford to simply engage in this sort of largesse. So Trump reshuffled the deck. He went to NATO and he made presentations. He said, look, you're saying that you want to stand by Ukraine. Okay, here's what you do. You buy this weaponry from us. No longer are we sending it over gratis. It is a matter of a sale. We will sell it to you. And once you have it, if you want to give it to the Ukrainians, be our guest. We'll be happy to have you do that. So essentially, Mr. Trump accomplished the same kind of thing that George Bush Sr. did with the first Iraq War. I don't know if you recall this or not. It tends to get lost in the shuffle because Mr. Bush made so many poor judgments. But one of the accomplishments that he did when he delivered the ultimatum to Saddam Hussein, get out of Kuwait or we will put you out of Kuwait. And he assembled an international coalition of nations. He even managed to get the Soviet Union in on it. And these nations, many of them said, we will contribute. The United States of America had the military, and other nations, like Japan, for example. Japan had no serious military of any kind at that point. Still pretty much doesn't. Japan had this constitution drawn up at the end of World War II that essentially demilitarized the country. But Japan said, we don't have guns, we'll send money. And a significant portion of the money it took to run Desert Storm was put up by the Japanese. So today, a significant portion, the money that it takes to continue to arm Ukraine is coming from NATO nations. And this is the European economy, which is basically on a par with the Chinese economy. This is a big chunk. In other words, they can afford this. So this is an accomplishment of President Trump's. And it points in the direction that no, Mr. Putin was wrong. No, Mr. Trump doesn't intend to simply walk away having lost patience and figuring, well, the grapes are sour, so I'm going to walk off. President Trump has long believed the crux of foreign policy is two leaders in a room making historic deals. Pulling off a ceasefire in Ukraine was the kind of diplomatic coup he has long craved. Now, it's still a long shot. Leaders could meet as soon as next week to pursue a peace agreement, but following months of maneuvering, their approaches remain at odds. Trump has urged Putin to stop the war, but has shown little interest in the specifics of a deal. Putin has rebuffed all attempts to halt the fighting except on his own terms. Yes, that's right, kind of like Hamas there. Oh yeah, I'll grant you peace as soon as you grant me everything I want. Essentially, he wants to obtain from a peace process what he was unable to obtain on the battlefield. We got a word for that. We call it chutzpah. Chutzpah is, well, how about your nerve? On the other hand, who can blame him? Ask for the moon. Asking ain't getting, which is absolutely true. To sway Putin, Trump has embarked on a more confrontational course. He threatened sanctions on countries that purchase Russian energy. He targeted India, a major buyer of Russian oil, with 50% tariffs on goods shipped to the U.S. Other nations that import Russian oil and gas, including China, could see their duties raised. But even Trump seemed less than optimistic. We're going to see what he has to say. That's going to be up to him, he told reporters. The White House is working on arranging a meeting with Putin, but would like a three-way with Ukrainian President Zelensky. The Russian leader said he is only open in principle to talks with Zelensky. We are still far from creating such conditions. After all, remember, so far as Putin is concerned, there is no Zelensky. In his view, Ukraine is Russian. We've got a call on the line about NATO. Let's find out what that's about here. There we go. Okay, it says you want to talk about NATO. Are you for it or against it?
I don't know. I'm not sure. It's Evan here again. I appreciate it for having me on one more time. I don't know. So I read into this, and I'd like to just have your opinion. I'm not disagreeing by any means. NATO members only spend 2%, and we seem to spend 3.4. Other UK accounts for 50% of non-U.S. spending. So I don't know. Well, what's your thoughts, sir? I just don't feel like I think it's a little uneven.
Well, for many years, this has been a complaint of American administrations. The difference is that Donald Trump actually decided, I am going to get something done about this. Merely complaining and registering our upset at footing most of the bill for Europe's collective defense hasn't been effective. So we're going to be a little more effective than this. He actually made noises about doing the unthinkable, about actually pulling the U.S. out of NATO. And essentially he was able to get I guess what's the old story? You want to get the mule's attention, you hit it over the head with a 2x4. Well, that's exactly the approach that Trump took toward NATO, because other approaches by other presidents over a period of years had not worked. Now, the recent NATO conference resulted in an agreement by the nations of NATO, all except Spain. Spain is still holding out, but the rest of them have agreed now they will raise their GDP contribution to military spending to 5%. Right now, the United States is at, as you pointed out, about 3.5%. So in order to fulfill it, we are going to have to spend more money on our defense establishment in order to meet that commitment. I'm happy with that. We need to raise our defense budget at the moment. We've, under Mr. Biden, we had real reductions in defense spending, and right now a correction is overdue. But the issue you raise of this inequality between NATO or European and American NATO contributions, this is one of the issues that Mr. Trump has addressed and has been serious about, and essentially has shown results on where other presidents of both parties did not. He deserves the credit for that.
What's your opinion? Because granted, you've said that how Trump, what Trump's doing. What's your general opinion? Do you think NATO people should be paying a little bit more?
Sure. I mean, I can't conceive of how anybody can feel it's reasonable for one member, even though it's the United States, one member of of NATO to spend a significantly higher portion of GDP. Remember, this is already done on a proportionate basis. I mean, we do not expect the other nations to spend the same dollar amount we do. We understand our GDP is far larger than theirs. But if Estonia, for example, I think the Estonians are already at 5%. But of course, they're right on the edge of Russia, and they take it very seriously. But if Estonia and Poland can do this, then so can the other NATO powers. And now they've agreed in writing to do it. Mr. Trump, he essentially had to. Well, I guess he had to use rhetoric and tactics that some people found uncomfortable. But over the years, it had been proven that nothing less would be effective. So if you're interested in accomplishing this, then to fault Mr. Trump for doing what was necessary to get it done is utterly unfair.
Oh, I 100% agree with you. I appreciate it. Again, Charles, you have a great rest of your show, your 10 minutes there-ish. And, again, have a great rest of your weekend, too. So,
I was going to ask you to enjoy yours, too. Thank you very much for the call, Evan. Have a good day.
Enjoy the sun, too. It looks like it's going to come out, too.
Oh, yeah, it has, hasn't it? Yeah, good. Okay. That a good phone call, because it brings out that issue. There are some people, they wanted the Europeans to begin paying their fair share of NATO, of the defense budget. Each NATO nation is committed in writing. As a part of the NATO agreement, we agree to spend 2% of our GDP. This was the old number, 2%. It's now been raised to 5%. And of course, the reason that the Europeans were willing to go along with this, the big motivator, well, That would be Putin. That would be Putin. Mr. Trump could go over and say, hey, you got to spend more on defense, and it would have minimal effect. But when you're actually catalyzed by a legitimate threat, Vladimir Putin is waging war right now. The war that's going on in Europe, this is the biggest European conflict since VE Day back in 1945. And the Europeans see that threat very clearly. So Mr. Trump, once again, he used that. He said, look, you've really got something sitting there. The Russian bear is very real. And Putin has turned Russia into essentially what the Soviet Union had. You've got a third world country supporting a giant military. That makes Russia scary. A country that suborns its entire economy to the military is embarking on a ruinous economic program. But again, if you have a police state at home where you don't have to worry about what people think, and if they speak out of turn, something happens to them, they disappear, or the knock on the door in the middle of the night or whatever. So you can operate with impunity. You can absorb 1 million casualties. So the real, the very real threat that Russia presents constituted a strong motivator to pay attention to President Trump when he came and said, listen, you've got to put more towards your defense because we are no longer going to carry the ball by ourselves. The Russians the Europeans can scream and yell all they want, but it is a matter of record that for many years they have essentially spent minimal amounts on their military. We've got 7 minutes left to go, and Michael wants to spend some of them with us. So let's invite him in the door and find out what he has to say today. Michael, you got 6 minutes. Make them count, brother.
All right, I'll give it a try, Charlie. Thank you for taking my call. Yeah, I'm just following up on my suggestion that Elaine Kulaki should run for governor on the Republican ticket, and wondering if you had a chance to give her a look and listen.
Well, again, she is a person of tremendous accomplishment, and I don't know if she would have to be willing to commit, at least 10, 15% of her personal fortune to the race. She's shown no indication that she's interested at all. Have you talked with her?
None at all. I haven't seen any either. No, but we just have to recruit her.
Well, how do you propose to do that? Are you going to get Eric von Zipper and the Rat Pack to go and impress her physically into running for governor?
Well, and the only way I know is to speak about her as a possibility, because when in looking at the possibilities that have been placed before us, I don't see anything that's going to change the body politic at all. But so we need somebody who has the personality and the intelligence and the volition to charge.
What was that? What was that third one there, please?
The volition.
Aha! No, I understand the word,
power.
And this is what so far has not been demonstrated. Ms. Kalati simply does not seem to be interested in a run for governor of California. If she is, she certainly is keeping it a secret.
Well, maybe she's waiting to be asked. That's sometimes what a good, strong woman.
And also, one other thing.
Will you dance with me?
You see, at this point, if I'm her, if I am she, I am looking at this and I'm saying, well, there's already 5 other Republicans running for governor. 4 of them, incidentally, will be at the barbecue that we're going to be having on the 23rd. So you'll have an opportunity if you're there to see and meet.
Maybe we should invite her to the barbecue.
There's an idea.
Crash the party.
Yeah, there's an idea. But the thing I was about to say was we have these 5 people. So if she decides to run, she'll be a 6th. The only way that this becomes viable is if somehow by her entering in, she can somehow tell the other 5, okay, it's time for you to quit this foolishness now. I'm here and I'm going to be the candidate for governor. Because if we split our vote 6 ways, then the next election for governor will feature 2 Democrats, as you well know.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, just a second. Hold it. We have a phone caller here. And this is this Evan?
Yeah, I'm reading an LA Times story. She reported April 24th, now this is 2023, she announced her running for her California governor. So, and I sent that to you August 5th, so that should be in your emails, sir. Yeah, LA Times, Lieutenant Governor, and I'm sorry, I can't get that name off. Could you say the name real quick one more time?
Elaine Kulati.
Yeah, so I guess she's running. I don't know. I looked into her a little bit myself. She's a business lady. Real estate, I guess, is her some of her parents and stuff. But anyway, I'll let you guys go. Appreciate it again. Thank you.
Oh.
Okay, well,
Charlie, we're one step closer already.
I don't know. This is something that I sure didn't find the other day when you called and talked about her. Cullotti.
Cullotti. Kulati.
Okay, 2
Elaine
L's.
Kulati.
2 L's and 1 T. Okay, I got it. We are just about out of time, so unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to get this done. Cullotti.
The lipstick farmer.
Okay. Undercover billionaire eyes governor run, slams Newsom. What time we got left here? Half a minute. Oh, this is on Newsmax. Well, unfortunately, they hyperventilate when awake.
What I discovered is that she does appears on people's podcasts quite frequently. And if you just do a YouTube search and put Elaine Kulati, and you'll see a lot of YouTube features that she's done.
Thanks for the
But
call.
she's very
It's noon,
articulate,
Santa Cruz
very
Voice. I'll
smart.
see you again on Monday at 9:06. Okay. We are done for the day.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you for the call. Have a good day. Okay, let's see here. Take that thing off. Yeah, well, oh. Mm-hmm. Dun dun. $179.